awesome day. So the reason why you apply the gloss varnish, normally I don't do this stuff on tabletop level commissions. However, since these are a little bit easier to paint in general, because like this one here, right, is only two colors, I can do a little bit more advanced techniques on it. So I'll show you kind of what's going on here. So all of the bronze, coppery, gold color here is covered with a gloss varnish, which repels the actual wash as you apply it. So it doesn't tint the highest points of the actual color, and it gives you a much smoother transition. We're going to be using probably 2 to 3 different colors on the metallics, so that way it breaks it up. So by the time we're done with this, obviously, it's going to look like there are many more colors than just 2. But it's all going to be done through washes. A little bit of movie magic, so to speak. But so we're applying this wash relatively thickly, and what it's going to do is pool directly into the cracks, but also stay super reflective. Now, it will dull down quite a bit, right? I mean, you're getting that reflection because it's wet. However, it's not going to require as much of a highlight to bring back up once the application is done. And we can go back through and apply other washes on top if we're not happy with it. We're keeping this kind of a dulled down color and not necessarily a traditional really warm gold tone. I did leave some areas unprotected or uncovered with that gloss varnish as well. Gonna apply it heavily here to the head, so that we get really, really, really strong pooling and transition. And you can see how it's pooling up there on the top. And it reacts much differently because the clear coat is on there first. Games Workshop makes a couple gloss inks as well. And it sort of has the same effect. If you do a gloss wash on top of a gloss coat, you're going to have a super intensified effect, but just trying to keep both of the shoulder pads relatively equal in terms of tone. So that's pretty good. And it will dry pretty much exactly that way that you've applied it. So as long as you're happy with the way that it looks wet, that's the way that it will actually dry. I'm going to apply a little bit more of the Umber Wash onto the palette. If you're just now joining, thanks for hanging out today. We're working on 2 of the remaining 3 color schemes here for Anachrony. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the rest. Hit the wings here. You can see just how reflective that gold actually is. And then you can see that awesome shading that happens because of the varnish that we've applied. Much different effect than if you just applied it on there without it. And you do want to make sure as well that when you're applying it, you're not applying too much because it will pool up on you quite a bit. If you do have that happen, you can just pull it off with the brush. It's no big deal. Alright, so there's that one. Get his back. And we're not going to use this wash anywhere except for these colors. So none of the other metal, none of the silver, anything like that. So let's go ahead and check on the wing to make sure. Okay, so it isn't going to pool up. That's good. Pretty much what we're looking for there. When I'm applying the wash, I usually do it either with the side of the brush or at a really steep angle. That way it applies evenly and it coats it. Then you can push around and manipulate the wash with the tip of your brush if you need to. Like so. All right, this side. And as this dries, it's going to remove the gloss coat that's on top. But since it's a gloss coat on top of a metallic, it won't dull the metallic as much as if you just applied a wash directly on top of it. So kind of a nice little trick there. And then obviously you can go back and do edge highlights and stuff like that. So it's a really simple technique, but a little bit more advanced than just applying a wash in general. Alright, I'm going to do the other side. Make sure I actually got some of these areas for sure. There we go. Tops of the wing. Underside of the little back feather, whatever area. You can see it is starting to dry already. Like that shoulder pad is dry. So you can see that really awesome effect that it has. Super smooth transition. Seth, to answer your question, there is no water in this wash. This is just direct dark umber from Vallejo. If you want to use water, that's fine. I suggest, instead of water though, using the Army Painter Quick Shade Wash Mixing Medium. This is a clear resin host medium that they use for all of their washes. So instead of watering it down, you actually gain control back on top of the wash. Alright, so that's all done. We're going to let him dry. As we're letting him dry, we're going to move on. Not move on, but we're going to move over to the other miniature of the day and start his first set of washes. So we're going to use this Games Workshop Coelia green shade. It's kind of like a blue-green. I have another wash from them, but it's really not as cool. Alright. So, shameless plug moment, of course. If it's your first time watching my streams, feel free to like the page. I stream Monday through Friday while I'm working on commissions. So you can always see whatever is going on there. I also have a Patreon page where I do tutorials, speed streams, all kinds of stuff like that, where you can get all kinds of cool stuff, do classes. I do a giveaway once a month of a display level miniature. All kinds of fun there. I'm about to reach 500 likes on the page, so once I hit 500, I'll also be giving away, I'm going to do a drawing for a giveaway of a miniature as well. And that'll be a display level miniature. So whenever that happens, make sure you've liked the page and you might just get something shipped to you. So you can see for these tentacles, it's a deep blue-green. And it is covering that base kind of necrotic flesh color that was used. There was no gloss coat or anything like that applied to this miniature. But the idea here is that we're going to go back over and individually highlight up the different tentacles or vines or whatever this is in green. So that way it's a more painted look, more organic looking. If you did use something like a gloss coat, obviously that necrotic flesh color would show up more underneath, but not necessarily the effect that we're trying to go for. But as it dries, you'll see too, it's way less intense, but we're going to do a couple different washes. We're probably going to apply like a sepia tone, something darker, maybe even this umber color that's already out on the palette. But either way, this is a pretty cold tone green, so we're going to mix it with a warmer color, and then it should be good to go. We just want to make sure we tone it down enough to where whatever color we use to go back and brush manually won't be kind of lost or won't stand out too much. We want it to be just right, tonally speaking, in between. Got some on the leg there. Wipe that off real quick. There we go. It's always important to remember as well that you are applying enough wash. You want gravity to do most of the work for you. Both of these should be done within an hour, which is going to be kind of entertaining, really, to see if the washes can dry that fast. But the actual paint job for the scheme shouldn't be too crazy. Obviously on this one, what's going to take the most time is going through and individually highlighting up all the little tentacles, but that's not going to be too bad. You can see the effect looks real nice as well. Pretty organic green, and again, we're going to go over it with a couple different colors, so it'll give it some spice, some some variety. There you go. Some verde-y since it's green. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Hope everyone enjoyed their extra hour of sleep if you are somewhere where you actually did have the time change for daylight savings time. Unless you're like mountain time where that doesn't change at all. Alright. Just going back through these little areas here. And I can see the other guy that's dry that we just applied that wash to, and it looks really cool. Happy with that result. Alright, make sure I got the underside. The nice thing about these washes, if you're not applying them too thick, they will dry relatively fast. And if they take a while to dry, you can always use a little tableside fan or something like that. Doing the little feet here. Now there will be like texturing done on the bases and everything, so some of the vines this will actually play into nicely because the vines will go into the dirt. But we always do that at the end. No need, no reason, especially now, right? Because we're doing washes, to have that on there because it'll just add more work. You always want to make sure you're painting smart, not working hard, so don't make it any more difficult than it needs to be on yourself. Alright, so this is the last little section of this green wash that we're applying. And it is drying in some of the areas where we applied it already first. But what we're going to do while this is drying is check out the first miniature. Gargoyle-y looking guy. Alright, so those washes are complete. Obviously the silver is still spanking fresh, but we're gonna tone down the whole thing, do highlights, all kinds of stuff. So we're gonna let that green dry. Off on the side. Wash out the brush a little bit. Alright, so the effect on this, very happy with. It is still dry in some places. Other places, too, it kind of like came off a little bit. Separated. So you can go back and just brush on top like so. And it'll dry matte like the rest of it. Let's see where it's more dry. So yeah, definitely dry on the arms and everything right there. And you can just see it dulled everything down quite a bit. Still getting quite a bit of the shine on the edges. Wherever it's shining too much, you can just reapply the wash. But it looks like we did a decent job covering up most of that base gloss coat. There we go. So yeah, not too bad. Then we can go back in and do edge highlights and everything on the color. Alright, so that looks pretty good. So the next color that we're going to go in with is a sepia shade. Actually, I say that. Let's just do a dark tone real quick, because the sepia can always tone down anything that we've done prior. So we're using Army Painter Dark Tone. Sort of like Nuln Oil, but a little bit better. Sort of like Reaper Black, but less intense. Okay. So now we're going in on just the silver portions to shade it out, tone it down. Bring out all that detail, all the definition. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them for you. This is definitely a technique, obviously, that's very, very simple. Beginners can do it, no problem. If you've never painted miniatures before, doing washes is very, very simple. You just have to have the right material to do it. Even if you don't have an ink or a wash, you can always water down your acrylic-based paints and get a very similar effect. It won't be as crisp and clean, but same idea. So we're doing this black tone first. It's a little bit brown, but it's mostly just black to pick out all the detail on the metals, and then we'll go through and apply different tones onto the metal afterwards. Alright, so you can see the effect that's having. A little bit more dramatic currently until it dries. Alright, so that looks fine. I need to get a little bit more out onto the palette. I'm on the last bit of this bottle, so then I can crack open a new one. I found one bottle usually will last me quite a long time from them. Alright. Back at it. Once this gold color, once all the umber is dry on there, I can go back in with this same dark black wash to really separate the different armor plating sections, because then it'll just look more like shadow instead of a patina effect, or I guess just a weatherized look. But either way, doing these thin washes usually, so like Games Workshop washes I'm not a big fan of, because I feel like they aren't they don't have enough body to them. They're really just more like straight up ink, so they flow on super fast. You can't really control the level of difference on it. With Army Painter stuff, you can really, really kind of control what's going on. With most of Vallejo, you can do the same. And it's a hard thing to describe unless you've used multiple inks from different companies, but some you can control like a normal paint, others you can't. But since I use all brands of paint, you know, I use whatever works best for what I need. Okay, so we applied that on there. Looks like the mouth actually didn't get hit with much, so I'll just use this ink since it's here. You can see this is all dry now, so you got that really nice layered effect on the shades. You can see the wing there, that really cool transition effect from the wash. Alright, now I just need a little bit more. I definitely will have to crack open the new bottle, though, whenever I do the rest of these. So this did pool pretty heavy on this vent, so I'm going to clear it out. Just pull the ink out of there. Maybe put a little bit of that black. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to do the top part. Tone it down. Real simple stuff. Alright. These little tubes coming out the sides. Alright, so he is good in that regard of allowing that stuff to dry. When I'm done with all these to the inside, I'm just going to go in and paint black wherever you put the little tokens while you're playing or whatever. Alright, cool. So we're going to let him hang out. I'm actually going to pull this back even further. There we go. Alright, so we're going to let him dry more. Check out this wash. It's pretty much dry. You can see the effect that green shade had, and you can see kind of the difference between a Games Workshop shade and the other two. This is a lot less, it creates less of a gradient than the other brands. It's not the worst thing in the world. But what I think I'll do now is I'll do an all-over uniform wash color. And I don't know if I actually have it out on the table or not. If I don't, I mean, I thought I did. Yeah, so I'm gonna pull out a different one here real quick. Just give me 1 second. Uno memento while I find this wash. Wherever it is. What are you? Not what I'm looking for. No. Here we go. Alright, so I was just looking for their strong tone, which is pretty much like a dark brown. Okay, so we are actually going to apply this all over the entire thing. Alright. Shake it up. So you can see this is a much different color than the black that we were using. I want to use warmer tones for this one so it looks more organic. Just trying to smooth it out a little bit as I apply it. You can see I'm actually wiping it off a little bit. Just like that, and it'll dry really smooth. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply it directly over our last wash, so all over that green as well. We're just going to darken the whole thing up, give it the same tone, same temperature. Like I said, that other green we used is really cold tone, which isn't that great if you're trying to make something look organic, so that's why we're adding this really warm tone to the whole thing. That'll really earth it all up and feel. You can kind of see already warming it up. Sorry, Seth, you're not going to get to see the rest of the studio. That's actually something that's going to be a part of the Patreon coming up here shortly. I'm going to do a breakdown of my workspace, how everything's organized. how I manage commissions, stuff like that. So this is just a tabletop level commission, so it's my lowest tier that I offer, and you can see the wash already drying right there. It's really subtle. I've done work for this client before, so for this commission, he asked that I just kind of do my own thing. He had one request for one of the factions that we haven't done yet. Everything else I've been kind of just going on my own, using a little bit of inspiration that I found here and there, but pretty much whatever I feel like would look the best. I'm going to drop more of the dark or strong tone on there. And you can thin this stuff out, again, if you use the quick shade wash mixing medium. Really good stuff to use. I use it all the time now. I have 7 bottles of it. Well, I guess I have 6 unopened bottles of it. Ready to roll at any time. Best products I can recommend from Army Painter, probably that. Their washes and the anti-shine varnish that they make is amazing. The brush-on version, not the spray can. I don't even know if they make a spray can. I'm sure they do. Doing his underside. Alright, so now we're going to ink the middle part there. Alright, the rest of the legs. Alright, so that's it. All over wash applied, singular tone. It's going to tie together that sort of cooler green tone that we applied, and then the rest of the metals, whenever that's dry, it'll look good together. So I re-upload the videos. So the videos stay here to answer your question. They stay on Facebook. They've never taken any of them down. So it'll remain in my video library. You can also follow me on YouTube. I re-upload the videos there in 1080p in their full length. If you subscribe to my Patreon, I do condensed versions of the streams where everything is edited and sped up, and then I do voiceover so you don't have to watch, you know, hours and hours of video footage. You can just watch like 5 to 10 minutes. To answer your question, all right, so he's going to dry. Check the update on this. So you can see he is slowly drying. At least in the last section. Like, this stuff's dry, though, right about there. Alright, I'm going to change this angle of the camera. Since these miniatures are a little bit bigger, like, they stick out more, so it's the actual depth of field is kind of hard to keep in focus. But you can see what we applied there. This is all really dry now, so we can go and start working on those highlights, but we're going to continue working on the actual black area, so I'm going to apply more of this strong tone. We're going to start changing the temperature here on certain parts of the miniature. So you can see what we're doing, right? I'm applying it to where some parts are going to be brown now. And this stuff will mix well with the black wash, so you don't have to worry if it didn't dry in the cracks, because it'll just go there anyway. All right, so you can see that was a really quick process. I just applied it in different areas. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I like to think I'm pretty fast, Seth. I normally can get commissions done super quick. All the methods that I use are really fast painting techniques. I mean, I've been painting for about 16 years, so at this point, I know how to get things done. But also just knowing the right steps to take helps cut down on your painting time. All right, so now the last thing we're going to do is take a sepia wash on both of the different miniatures and apply them in very small portions, but it's going to be a really, really warm tone. Really orangey, muddy brown. Oh, got it on my fingers there. All right. So I'm just going to add this here and there in small portions. So I'm going to make it look like these vents have been rusting, draining. So you can see that effect right there. On the back, we're going to do it on all these vents. Again, we're using this little color sparingly to create sort of different sections of visual focus. Just to give it a little bit more color. And take it out in some of the places where it's a little bit too deep. There we go. Alright. Move back to this bad boy. He's really not going to need it in a lot of places, but we'll still enhance a couple parts. So yeah, again, I know I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I didn't explain it all the way. So if you're someone that's looking to learn to paint, looking for one-on-one classes, feedback, stuff like that, I do offer them on the Patreon that I run. So you can see that information in the bottom right-hand corner. Really simple, patreon.com/minipaintingstudio. Really cheap, monthly payment, $3 or $5. And I take all the hours and hours of stuff that I do every week, and I speed it up, throw it back up there, do voiceover for you. I do reviews, classes, tutorials, tips, tricks, you name it. I raffle off a display level miniature. So to give you an example of my display level stuff as I beat that camera. So this is a good example of my highest level of commission work that I'll do. So every month I raffle off a miniature for free and send that to my patrons as well. So you can kind of get an idea there of what you can expect. Obviously different for every miniature, but this is a good example. If you ever need anything painted, I offer 3 different tiers. So obviously display being the highest. What you're looking at right now is tabletop level, which usually just means a lot of different techniques to give it a lot of depth. But you can see the awesome shading that's on these wings and everything just from the washes. So that's just one step, right? That's not too difficult. Let's see, this guy's drying nicely. I think I'm gonna go around his little middle bubble in the sepia. Also, whenever my page hits 500 likes, I'll be raffling off a display level miniature there. So if you haven't liked my page, feel free to do so. Then I will randomly select somebody that's someone that's liked the page and send you a really badass painted miniature. I have a large assortment of stuff to choose from, so I'm not 100% sure what I'll be giving away, but it'll be something fun. Going around the recess here. Give it a little bit more definition up top. I'm gonna do it again down here. You can see it's really subtle, but that's all you have to do. Just apply it in the cracks. Alright, so that'll be it for that. Alright, so he's just going to be drying, no problem. No problem. This guy here is on his way to be finished, and you can see the little areas where we applied all that stuff. Where it's still wet, but it toned it out a little bit. So the only other thing that we have to do left now, once these are all dry and everything, we then bring them back up to the base color. So an example here on this guy, after doing the washes on top of his shell, you just do layering back on top to bring it up to that color. Everything else on him was left relatively dirty, but I wanted him to look like, right, it's some type of aquatic, you know, mech. The other paint scheme too, if you've missed those streams, right here. This faction being really the only other faction that had a lot of different things going on with it. But we did the same effect on this that we did on this guy's gold. So for the yellow, we applied a gloss coat and then washed it. The shading on this is literally just one wash applied, and then you do pinstriping on the edges, so edge highlights. So a bunch of really simple techniques that are very easy to learn and use, but they have a good effect. The last faction, let me see where this guy is. Here he is. So this one's gonna be cool. This isn't varnished or varnished, it isn't primed or anything. But all the faces on this are gonna be really fun to paint. So they're just gonna be straight up silver. Do a wash on all the silver, and then we'll really kick detail into the faces, so the faces look really badass. But this is the only one that the client had a request for, the color of the entire thing, kind of like the faces at least, to get a scheme on those. So but that's what you can expect for that faction. Let me move this cable out of the way. It's gonna bump the camera. All right, and that's all the factions for Anachrony. So let's see how our weathering effect here is drying. I think it looks good. Looking nice. And then, of course, really, I don't even think we're going to go back up to highlight. We may do edge highlights on some of the silvers, but the rest of the focus here on this guy is just going to be the actual vines, going in, doing highlights on all the different vines, those sections. This guy, the rest of the details, will be picking out some of the metallics, right, to bring them back up to color, and then re-highlighting up the edges on the different details on, you know, obviously like his shoulders, the head, the hands, stuff like that. The wings, pick out some of the detail on the wings. But obviously you can tell, I mean, the shading effect that we achieved with the wash was pretty great, so nothing too crazy to actually go back and do. A little bit of work, you just have to be patient. This obviously was a little bit more work because it has 1, 2, 3 different colors, four colors involved, so like twice as many. Yellow is also a lot harder to paint because it's harder to get good coverage on. I've yet to find a good brand that has a heavy pigment yellow that's nice and actual, like, nice and thin enough to spread on your own without a lot of watering, so that was what took the longest on that, was getting a good base color. This, the first time we did it, if you go and check the other streams, this was blue, and it took forever to get that on there. This red was just one coat, wash, and then highlight back up, so it was much easier, and I like it. It's kind of like lobstery feeling, so that's the idea for that faction. Anachrony? Nah, Anachrony. Anachrony. At least that's how I say it. Yeah, so Seth, all that stuff is on the Patreon. I don't give away that information for free. Unfortunately, that's a part of the classes and everything that I teach, so. And it's usually best done in a one-on-one setting because it depends on where you live, right? Like, if you're in the US and you have certain stores by you, it's easier to get starting materials and everything like that locally. If not, then the question's different, right? It becomes where you buy it all online, stuff like that. All right, so we're just waiting for the very, very deep recesses to dry here so I can go back in. We can start the line work on this guy, most likely. These, I don't know. We can probably get away with starting the work. Yeah, we can try. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take necrotic flesh and actually mix it with another green color. So we're doing like an army green first. Mixing it in with necrotic flesh. You can see not a lot of necrotic flesh. And then I'm going to take the quick shade wash mixer to thin it out. 1 drop. Mix it here on the palette. Looks good. It's not too vibrant. Do a thumb test. Could be thinned down a little bit, but that's decent. I have a ton of paint. I mean, in front of me right now, I have at least 96. I have like a rack set up in front of me, and I have, yeah, I mean, I have at least 96. I probably have 20 plus different washes, stuff like that. All different brands. All right, so let's start cracking on this guy. I'm going to move the camera a little bit closer. I'm going to change the focal point. So give me 1 second while I readjust this. Assuming it'll load. There we go. All right, that should be in focus for you. Okay. So now we're just going to go through, start highlighting up all the tentacles. Now we're not going to do every single one, but I'm going to do the ones that obviously are catching the most light. Using a size 00 brush. It's what I use for pretty much everything all the time. Alright, so that's not too bad, and we aren't highlighting it back up to the original color, because that necrotic flesh obviously is not green. It's tinted green, but it's a really, really light skin tone. So we're electing for this kind of lighter, neutral green color. Nothing bright. I don't want it to compete with the warm tones in the metal, so that's the idea there. We may do one highlight color on top. We'll see. We'll see. Oop, as I drop the brush, we'll have to see how it actually turns out whenever we're done, but one may be enough. If you're just now joining, thanks for hanging out today. Hope you're having a good Monday. Hope daylight savings time is treating you well. His midsection, I'm only going to do a few. The vines are a lot thinner, so I'm just going to break up some of the vine areas with the highlight. But since it's in shadow anyway, you don't really have to worry about it too much. But as you can see, right, I'm just picking out a couple towards the bottom, not towards the top. Just to help pick out that monotony. That's pretty much it for the stomach. Alright, gonna work on the feet here. Now you could dry brush this as well if you're not comfortable in doing direct highlights. But I like having more control, so that's why I'm not dry brushing. I feel like you can get better detail. Very rarely do I dry brush anymore. But it's a great technique. We will go back over it one more time with a much more vibrant green color for that final highlight, and then that'll be it for the tentacles. So that way, right, the most of the detail is spent going back in and detailing the vines. On the metal, as you can see now that it's dry, that's pretty much it on its own. I mean, I may go back and do a couple of things, but I mean, they last forever, James, depending on the brand. As long as it doesn't dry out, usually they mix it with a resin. So, depending on the company. For me, I go through a bottle of wash relatively quickly, depending on how many miniatures I paint a month. So, I go through about 50 brushes in 20 weeks. Since I paint so much. But I'm a full-time commission painter, so you know, the brushes that I use and different things like that completely different than you know, your average painter, right? Like I'm painting 4 to 8 hours a day. So that's kind of the difference there. Again, if you ever need anything commission painted, feel free to ask for a quote. You can hit the get a quote button on the page. You can send me a message directly, whatever you prefer. Really fast, really good results, pretty cheap compared to pretty much every other company I've ever kind of done some research on, so at least for the quality you're getting. If you're interested in more detail, you can always check out minipainting.studio/pricing. You'll be able to see the comparison of the different tiers there as well. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this color. Now, I could mix in directly that last highlight color to this, which I think we may do. May as well just go for it. So I'm gonna put this guy down. Clean the brush a little bit. We're gonna mix in this Reaper Master Series Pale Green, so it's a really high pigment color, super high pigment. It's like neon green. Here we go. I'm happy with this color. Thumb test. Alright, looks good to me. Actually, I need that to be a little bit more intense, just putting it on there. It's the only problem with doing these large mixes here on the palette. Sometimes hard to tell what exactly the pigment is, but that should be better. Alright, back at it. There we go. So just picking out highlights here with that brighter green. So you can see we're just adding that more saturated bright green to pick it out even more. All right, so he's almost done. Other than the basing, of course. All right, I'm gonna do this section. All right, so that's it for this guy. Nice, happy with that. Okay, so this guy's nice and dry, almost. You can see all those washes we've applied. Turned out pretty well. Whoops, hold on one second. Alright. What do you mean, not doing the faceplate? You mean this? Right here? I mean, I left it cleaner. Most of the painted examples that I see, people do this like it's a green plate of glass or something different, so I don't know. I mean, I think it looks fine the way it is. This is also the cleanest portion of metal, but, I mean, if it's supposed to be a cockpit or something like that, you know, the only other option is to paint it and then layer it up and do something like that. So for me, it's not worth the time. So all right, so this guy, we can start going back in. Let's see. Let's just plop a new one. Why not? There we go. Okay. So I did thin down the metallic color a little bit so that we can layer it back in. That's what's nice about the Army Painter metals. Just like Vallejo, you can thin them down. Games Workshop, I've only had marginal results doing that with, so. But Army Painter is probably my favorite brand for metallics. Vallejo second. Everybody has their preference, though. And you can see because of the wash that we applied, we really only have to go in a little bit to actually do our highlights. Mostly just edges, things like that. Did apply that a little bit too thick there, but I can wash it down. Like so. Little dab of ink. No big deal. It'll kill that pigment. Alright. Just doing the edges here of the plating. That way we're able to retain that nice dull look. Just with edge highlights. Keeping the shading. I will go back and do a whole cover tone there on the top. I mean, we can do it right now. Just need to make sure it's watered down enough. thin strokes here so that we don't get a bunch of texture. Metal paint can be pretty bad about that. Then once I know that's dry for sure, I'll go back in for one more coat. All right. Hitting the knuckles here. Bringing those hands back to life. Not that they were dead, but clearly they're not as shiny. So you can see how reflective that is. Really nice gold color. Alright, so let's we'll just start going after the back here. Nice thin edge highlights. Some people use the edge of their brush. You can do that as well. I just use the tip. Insert. Jokes. Alright. The paint's drying a little bit, so I'm going to water it back down, give it some more life. Alright, brought that back. Let's go for the top. Doing total pigment on that same paneling section that was on the top of his head. So just going along with that same theme. So that way, front and back, it all makes sense. Otherwise, not much to highlight on the back, just the edges. Go. All right, so the wings. Don't want the wings to look super clean, so we're leaving the top portions dirty. So now we'll go in and pick out those middle sections and just do edges. Make sure I have a good grip on this guy. So you can see what we're doing there. And that's all we're doing for that. You can see where we just highlighted it up again. Just giving it a nice reflection if it ever hits the light. That's pretty much it. Same on this side. All right. I'm thinking the effect looks pretty good. All right. So there we have that. Really, the only thing left to do on this guy is clean up some of the other metal color, right? His eyes are pretty far sunken in there. May go for a color, maybe like red. I don't know. Maybe a green. Green could look pretty good. So to recap on these two, you can see a really different vibe going on. One way more organic than the other. So, pretty happy with the way these two turned out. The only thing you didn't see right was when I was doing the actual color blocking. So, minute 15, not too bad. May come back on the stream later on today to knock out the final faction. But gonna do the rest of the base coating on the other 5 that are for these. And yeah, so to recap right, all we did on this guy, we did a gloss coat varnish on this color before we applied the wash, and then washed the other silver as we normally do. This guy did a really thin, greasy, kind of grimy brown wash to tone it all together after we washed the green on top of a necrotic flesh from the army painter. Really simple. And then the only other difference, right, from the last time I worked on this commission was with this guy. Changed him from the bright blue to the lobstery red color. So that was the idea with that one. And then, of course, the first one that was done, we'll just do them all like this, I guess, since the camera faces down anyway. And then the first one being this guy all together. We'll just bring it in a little bit more at this angle. There we go. We'll just adjust the camera. So that's where we're at so far with all of these. We have one more faction remaining, and we'll knock out that one possibly later today. But as always, make sure you like the page. You can see all my other streams, everything I do. The bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can check out my Patreon, where I have classes, tutorials, speed streams, monthly giveaways, all that stuff. Make sure you like the page too, because when I hit 500, I'll be giving out, I'm not sure what exactly, but we'll be doing some kind of display level giveaway. Something like that. So, free miniature to somebody there, and then once again, every month too on the Patreon, I give away miniatures. So you'll be able to check that out. You can also follow me on YouTube. I re-upload all the streams afterwards at the end of the day in 1080p. So you can check me out on YouTube, Mini Painting Studio. Same thing there. If you ever need anything painted, ask me for a quote, or you can check out my pricing at minipainting.studio/pricing. So, again, thanks for hanging out today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and your week is awesome. Thanks again, guys.